Let's see. Get on my Google. Looks like Google doesn't want to cooperate with me today. Brian, are you in the district network?
I am.
And are you able to get on Google?
I am.
Oh. I'm just the lucky one.
Let's see.
Let's see if I'm hardwired or Wi-Fi. Well, I'm hardwired.
Yeah, I'm in.
Okay. Well, Brian, I'm going to go ahead and give you the presenter ball, and you can share your screen with everyone.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Am I doing it?
Yep.
All right. Let's see. Where are you?
Okay. So why don't you, let me see. I think I can ask for permission to share your screen.
Okay.
Okay.
That's scary.
Okay, so that's me. Good. All right, so let's just take a look at our notes from last time. And I did invite Kendra Fox to come today. She is our Director of Curriculum and Instruction here in Washoe. And I'm not sure if she was able to make it or not, but I did invite her. And I'll speak with her after our meeting, too, if I can, about what we talked about. Kim and I actually talked on Friday, and we were trying to figure out a direction for our group anyway, because we both agreed that our group is going to be the one group that is really getting the other two groups in motion. So I think what we need to come up with our plan so that then the infrastructure group can figure out how they're going to address it. But one of the things that we decided, or not decided, but we threw out there was the idea of having a statewide online PD catalog where, whether it's a website or whatever, that, or maybe even just even a Google Doc or something that has all of the online professional development that's available across the state, along with directions on how do you register, all those details. And I think once we get that together, then that will show our legislature how, not confusing, but how complex it is for our teachers to be able to access this online PD when it's, some of it's in Clark, some of it's in Washoe, some of it's in Elko, and everybody has different, LMSs and so on. And so, but just to show that we know what's available and our teachers know what's available, but it really does call for a statewide LMS. So that was what we were talking about. Anyone have thoughts on that?
This is Leanne. I'll jump in. I think that sounds like a great idea, the online PD catalog, whatever that would look like. I think that would be really beneficial for everyone.
Well, yeah, and I think even without the one-to-one, we still want to have that because we've been talking about that for a while now. That
Yes.
we really do need that, and teachers need it.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thank you for kind of recapping there. I thought that was great, and having one statewide LMS that's kind of controlled by NDOE would be fantastic, right? Because that's what we can share all of the different PD offerings that we have. I know the RPDP offers tech courses that are linked to a master's degree. We also have content area courses that can be technology focused in a lot of ways.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there's just, we have the ability right now. We just don't have a central place for teachers to look. And we get, sorry, this is all over the place. I'm trying to get to the top here. Okay, so what's today, the 24th?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, but it's really hard, even if we all advertise it, you know how that goes when, like, if I email out a flyer and then somebody else emails a flyer, it just gets lost in the shuffle, and teachers don't have time to hunt those down.
True.
So any other comments?
Yeah, so I was looking around Washington State's website, and their Department of Ed has kind of, it's a bit of an online catalog that at least points people in the right direction for whatever types of PD courses they're looking for, and they actually have student courses for registration for online classes.
Right.
I thought something like that, that's why I was mentioning before that it's on the NDOE site, because if it's, at least if we are simply just sending our information to them, or they make branch pages that we're able to kind of control and post up what things are being offered, I think that would be a really easy way that is centrally located for teachers to be able to find it.
Right.
And we all have slightly different programs and different takes on why those programs are important, and regionally we have different emphases, and it would be good if that would be, at least all teachers can see what's happening throughout the state and attend whatever things they wanted to.
Right, so I would add that we need to be focused on an effective PR campaign.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So then wouldn't that rely on somebody at DOE that's going to take what anybody sends them and post it there somehow? Or do we just get them to put a link on their website that points to, you know, a Google Doc or whatever that somebody else is updating with all that info, and I don't know who, but can we rely on them to do that, or?
Yeah, well, see, and that's another thing we were talking about is, you know, in the long run, we would want an LMS administrator at the Department of Ed level, yeah. and also, so someone for the tech piece of it, and also someone for the PD for online facilitators. So that, I mean, that would be down the road, but definitely need at least one person that's a position that's hired at the DOE to maintain this, or some kind of stipends for, you know, like, let's say if I was going to help with it, or someone in Clark, or both, in the short term until we actually do convince them that we need a position or two or three to manage it for the state. But I would think to get started, a link on the DOE website, and linking to whatever our external tool would be, that we maintain until, you know, the fabulous day that 2 or 3 people are hired, or one.
Well, even if they didn't do that, if there was a website for teacher PD, and right. sections within that website were managed by the different entities that were offering that PD, yes. right? So Elko right. County School District wants to add this new course link. I would see that as really there's like a one paragraph maybe introduction to the program, and then a link to drive to the actual like web page that describes all the different parts of the program.
Okay, yeah.
Exactly. Like we offer a lot of different courses, and they have a lot of different intents. So like if we just had one paragraph that said RPDPs in your area can offer X amount of courses. Usually their credits are based on this university. Click here for more information. Then that more information link branches off of the NDOE page and goes to the specific RPDP page. Or like what you offer in Washoe, those courses look really cool. Like you can link that back to a specific section.
Right. So a website which has a page from each entity showing the offerings.
Mm-hmm. And the reason I almost advocate more for something like that is are we likely to get for NDOE funding someone to have a position to manage an LMS that's statewide? Potentially, but if we continue to like say, well, we want a web person to organize the PDE credits and like the different types of university credit, like that could be, well, I don't want to ask too much.
Right, right. Well, I think if we set it up initially where it is manageable for us without a position at the Department of Ed, I think that would give us a better sustainability. But then, yeah, I see what you're saying. It's like we want to set it up so that we show that there's a need. We don't want to show that it's too easy for us to manage. But you know, with reality as it is, we have to accept that the possibilities of getting a position are not that good. But I know it's written in the plan.
So I was thinking something like that. I just typed it in there.
Okay.
I am apparently the anonymous orangutan.
You are.
I've heard that.
Go ahead. Is there a way that we can track participants? If we can show either that we don't have a lot or we have an abundance, either way, there's a message that we need help from DOE. If we don't have a lot of participation, then we need somebody at the head really pushing it, making it happen. If we have this abundance of participation, we need somebody at the head to help pull through it, to help facilitate and get other people to facilitate these groups. But if we have a way of tracking participation, we can let it speak either way.
Right.
Well, through the different courses that are offered throughout the state, there's a lot of pockets of really strong participation, and then there's some courses that don't seem to get a whole lot of bite from teachers. But I think if it was to some way centralized where people knew where they were going specifically to find PD opportunities, and then from there could branch out and do, you know, into the individual nesting of a particular entity's webpage to see like what specific things are being offered at this moment in time. I don't know. I think that would be extremely useful for teachers. And then would that just, I mean, you could just do Google Analytics to see how often people are clicking on and selecting and moving forward with different things.
It seems like that the person at the State Department, and I know that's probably not anytime soon, but the key to all of this is that PR campaign, because I believe Washoe and Clark are the only two districts in the state that actually have full-time PR people. I don't think any of the other districts do. So really, how do we get that word out? If teachers don't know about it, they're not going to sign up for it, no matter how great it is.
Yep, I agree.
But if we're sending that information out to our people, like we usually do an email campaign, and I think I know I've seen some stuff from Northern RPDP from out of Brian's group that they're sending out like these are things that are coming up and we're being offered, and through our state agency websites and our state organization websites, like at the Q conference and the Science Teachers Conference and Math Teachers Conference, we can start that messaging, and I don't know if that really requires a position.
So are you saying that the RPD piece could be that PR piece?
I think
regions?
I don't think the RPDPs would have any problem supporting PR and getting the message out for teacher PD. I mean, that's really what we do anyway. But I think more than that, like Brian and myself often work with the STEM conference that happens in Reno. We can advertise this central location so people can at least know that that's a good place to go to first. Here in CCFD, there's a group. Well, I'm sorry, it's like a clearinghouse called Pathor, and that's what teachers register through. So you can easily just link that off of the state's website with like a quick description. So at the Math Teachers Conference that we all often attend as content people, we can go and simply distribute like flyers or information or even run sessions. And I know Q offers a pretty good conference too.
Well, it just seems like in the past, at least here in Carson City, I'm not sure who, like if RPD keeps send things out or they're statewide things, depending on who they're sent to, they may get sent out, they may not.
I agree, Leanne. Same thing, same issue.
That's true.
Yeah, it's only as good as the email blast that you send out, who's on it and who's not. And we're told often that if you hit schools and or principals at schools, some do a good job of getting that out to their staffs, and with some it dies, you know, in their email folder. So I'm not sure how we do a better job of that way, but you know, unless you're sending out blasts that go to every school district's entire email list or something, but I know they found it.
Yeah, I agree that the PR is key. And for the E4E classes, I mean, it's taken us a couple of years to really build up our clientele, and we don't have an official, you know, PR campaign that we use other than, you know, email blasts to our groups that we have. I know in Washoe, I can send it to our communications department, but they don't send it out on its own. They send it, you know, at a cluster of, here's upcoming events, and then there's like 5 or 6 flyers that are attached, and you know, a lot of people just hit that delete button when they get those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, does that describe like a deeper root cause of the lack of networking within this state entirely?
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's necessarily solved by the PD construct of like a website where people can go to just look at it and then click a link to then drive to that specific kind of entity that's offering the PD. But is that something that could be solved with maybe like a teacher's networking site?
Yeah, well, and I think like what Tara was saying, no matter what you set up, it's not going to probably be highly effective, you know, as soon as it's set up. It's going to have to have a certain kind of PR around it, making people aware that it's there, and so it's something that's on people's mind that they're checking, or you know, whatever. It might be a little bit like the healthcare rollout without necessarily the non-working website. That, you know, it's going to take a while for people to know where it is and how to get there, and how it works, and how it pertains to them, and so I think as long as you're not counting on whether it's email blast or a website or a combination and anything else to think of, it's going to take a while to make that part of the culture of what people are doing.
I agree. That's just time, right? That's just going to take time to get established.
So I think it's worth setting any of those up. You know, in the meantime, none of them seem to me like they're overly time-consuming tasks. You know, it's like we're setting up a whole website from scratch that's super complicated or whatever. And the only other piece I can think of is, you know, is there someone to talk to about email blasts, or is that, you know, something that we don't want to go into? Or because I think the email things we have set up now, I'm sure each individually are probably to the usual suspects. The people tend to respond and go to things and whatever. I think the only way you get past that is if you literally have, every email in the school district, and you're able to blast them all. But
right.
Though, I have an email group that's got like 200 people in it, and I've only had a couple people ask to be removed from it, and I don't send out a ton of stuff, through it. So I think that, there's that tipping point where people are like, okay, I'm getting too much of this or whatever, and I don't want to be your in-between, person.
yeah.
But I think, just from what I know about the teachers that take our PD that's either online or blended, they want more, and they want more online options to even some of the classes that are, that aren't ones that we do, but that our district offers for teachers. They wish there was an online
So I'm
option.
wondering.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Tara. I'm wondering, so it's obvious that we need to be very specific about our PR campaign, but then what's our timeline, or how are we going to move forward in either compiling all of these classes, developing these classes, or determining what classes will be offered? Is that our role?
I think it'd be good for us to do that work that collects, just get it in one spot so we have it, and go from there. But I think that's a worthwhile effort, just statewide, for us to do. And then the second part of that is, just like you said, what do we do? What's our timeline, and what do we do to give Dale some talking points at the legislature?
Right. And how does that connect to what the other two committees need to be thinking about and planning for?
Just that we can show what's available, and that we have, again, and I think it does two things. It shows what's available, but then it also shows how, how complex the systems are when we have more than, 2 or 3 LMSs out there that people have to try to navigate to get the courses.
I completely agree. I mean, that is an issue, and I think that can easily be solved, right, with a statewide LMS kind of construct, and people can jump in and jump out. There's some bigger things too that I think the technology group will have to start to think through, and what SIS is going to be used, how that's going to function, and who's going to be controlling what enrollments look like. I don't know. That's not necessarily our charge, so that makes me happy. But if I do think through some of the other parts, right, so the curriculum and instruction kind of angle to it, arguing for a statewide LMS doesn't become a necessity unless connectivity is there for every district, so every district has quick, easy access. I had a pretty nice conversation with a lady from Cisco, and she was making a few phone calls to other people, and it essentially came to the messaging that most of the districts could have that very easily with a few switch upgrades, which would be great. So in terms of that costing a huge amount, it didn't sound like it would be a crazy figure. The other thing too that has to be considered is, what does the curriculum look like that teachers are going through, and that's what we've talked about here as PD, but then what about for students? Because if we're pushing the one-to-one concept, right, then where does that material come from, or do we not have to worry about that?
Well, and also what's the philosophy behind that one-to-one? I mean, I felt like what was being talked about those 2 days, I pretty much agreed with, that it wasn't about the technology and but do we need to also, as part of this, come up with a common, I'm not sure what to call it, not just a scheme, but of, what's the goal of one-to-one? We talked about it being the goal being learning, but how then do all these trainings have that as their, goal? Do we need to, start thinking that way as we design PD pieces and whatever, and so therefore do we need, a statement to kind of point at to run that through?
Well, and we can get like super deep with that, right? And there could be like evaluative processes that happen on an NDOE level that they're looking at online content and approving or not approving for the state, for statewide usage. A lot of districts are already kind of doing that on their own in some varying capacity, and then the state has a version of doing that when they do accreditation, but it's not necessarily cleared by content people to look at it, right? So they'll say the number of hours that this course will take are appropriate, but no one's going through the actual course to review it in terms of the depth of the content that's being asked and how well it authentically aligns to our curriculum, our standards versus how well the company can suggest it aligns.
It seems like two different things that go together here. It's one thing to put a link to the district, to the DOE about basically a catalog format. This is what Washoe offers. This is what Elko offers. This is what Carson City offers. This is what Clark offers. But to actually manage it, or if the course structure, whatever that is through an LMS, that's a completely different level than just, this is what's available. How, just thinking out loud, how does that, I think we could definitely put together something that would be considered a catalog with what's already being done. But the LMS, are we looking at, everybody's going to do all of their PD in Moodle or whatever, whatever the LMS is that would be chosen? That seems to be, that's a whole different ballgame.
Absolutely.
PD offered in other LMSs now, and to convert things, and it goes on and on. But
right, because you're right, Leanne. So we would be asking. We would be asking people who are already running classes in a different LMS to move it to the centralized one.
Well, I don't know if we necessarily ask people to do that, or there is a statewide LMS that becomes available for teachers to use in their classroom with students and for professional development providers to be able to use with teachers. And on that main central page for NDOE that describes kind of, okay, Washoe County School District offers a whole host of PD opportunities, click here to learn more, and Washoe is offering 50% of them on Edmodo. I don't see anything wrong with that. I think that's decisions that the entity makes, and then over a period of time, if Washoe is finding that most people don't like taking them through Edmodo, they want them through Moodle, then they start thinking about switching to Moodle if that's a decision they want to make. I think that's a site decision. People can choose that, but if the state makes it available in open access, like a library concept, right? Like the library's there, it's up to you to go use it. Right. But you have the ability to use it. Because if you think of districts outside of really Washoe and Clark, spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on a statewide LMS, or I'm sorry, district-wide LMS implementation could not prove fruitful. But if they had that opportunity coming to them and saying, hey, the state's purchased, there's 3,000 licenses available to, for teachers and students in this county, that could be extremely beneficial for them to decide, okay, well, we can do a few things now because we have so much. And the other point that I think Dale and I were, I'm sorry, not Dale, I've just read Dale, that Brian and I were kind of talking about, where it could potentially get much deeper than that. And in other states, There's like in California, they have an evaluation kind of rubric that courses that vendors want to sell to the state to give credit for, say, physics. They have to go through this rubric process, and they're evaluated on things that are just deeper than superficially how much time will it take a kid to go through it, and does it cover all the regular standards? Do we want to go that direction? That one sounds like that's a big hurdle, I think.
Yeah, that's a lot of work too. And as you were talking, I was thinking, we have some teachers using Moodle for their classroom, and they have not all been, hardly any of them have been really trained on being an online facilitator, which at some point it could be an issue if they go to an entirely online type of course, which I don't really see happening. They're going to do mostly using it as a part of a flipped environment or a blended environment.
Okay.
But anyway, with the PD side of it, I could see people wanting to create online courses for PD, but really not understanding what quality online PD is. You can't really take a face-to-face workshop and cram it into an online format and expect it to work. So
Tara, could we do something like what Leanne and Carson City have in place with those pillars, or with those prerequisites? You have to do this, this, and this before you can take these other classes. Well, if you want to contribute to creating online PD, you yourself have to take some PD to learn how to make a quality. We could have that as one of our.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, I know, and speaking of that, Clark has that whole program that they've put together for online and blended certificate. I also have 2 different classes that I teach on online pedagogy and just facilitation skills.
Well, I guess there's kind of 2 ways that I can think about going through that, right? It's not to make them mandatory, but to make them open. So after teachers start using kind of an online LMS and they're trying to figure out how to do flipped and they're not getting the results that they want, right? They're making a decision at that point that flipping a classroom is not successful in their implementation, and is that because it's not successful as a model, or it's not successful in the way that they're doing it and they'll seek professional development to do it better? Or we make the statement that we don't think teachers are capable of doing that on their own, and they have to go through certain requirements to be able to access the online system.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. In Washoe, our in-service person really wants it to be required that anybody that teaches an online PD class go through my class prior to that. But you've got, and I like what you said. I mean, some people understand it naturally that how to make that transfer to the online situation, but some people don't. And I guess it's maybe we have a screening or something where they say, do you know how blah blah blah, and they go through and I don't know. I understand what you're saying is we don't want to make it necessarily a huge obstacle for people to be able to do it, but we also don't want it done poorly and there's no process to make sure it's quality, especially on the PD side, because we do have some, not naysayers, but we do have some people who are not necessarily in the know when it comes to online PD.
Right. Well, part of that then we have to look at the providers to say that they know what they're doing when they build their stuff too, right? So we'll have people who are offering PD that often don't necessarily have the right structure to what they're doing. They don't have a framework for development that they're targeting in general. So do we have the ability to start regulating that also?
I guess
go ahead.
I guess that's where our curriculum and instruction people come along for the K-12 part. But yeah, the PD it's tough because
I can give an example, right? I mean, I've been building online stuff for different groups and universities for about 5 years now. I worked for Virtual High School last year and was part of their blended learning certificate program. So I kind of worked through developing those courses. But I was also contacted by a different group, and they asked me to work with them, and I looked through their stuff and I turned them down because what they had as a model was not actually how people learn. They just took their notes and put them online and were expecting that to work.
Right.
So if we get into the regulation business, I don't know, I think that's a double-edged sword, right? Can we ignore one part of that and focus on the other and hope that that works out correctly?
Yeah,
maybe that's the State Department person's role.
Right. Well, that's also my biggest concern is that you can have someone out there that's got some really bad online PD and end up getting the whole program tarnished because of that, person.
Completely agree.
You know what I mean? Because, I don't know, you have good facilitators and good course developers, but you might not necessarily have that in the same person.
Absolutely.
Some people are good at facilitating a course that's already created. Some people are good at creating a course, but not very good at facilitating it. So I think maybe there should be some kind of a board of, people that have been doing this for a long time, and that we can not really approve the course, but maybe be a consulting board for people.
I'm wondering too, and you guys help me out here, how nuts and bolts we really have to be here. Maybe we have to be quite a bit, I'm not sure, but it sounded to me like when Dale got up and spoke, he was saying, hey, design something that's really what you want it to be and real cutting edge and something I can, quickly explain and, and sound like I know what I'm talking about as far as how this would impact learning and, really push us to the edge. And so do we need to have all the ways this is going to work already figured out, or is it going to be better if we just go more big picture and then after somebody says, after it gets the okay or whatever,
right?
Then sit down. I think that's going to happen anyhow, and figure out exactly how that's going to work. Plus, at that point too, you may or may not have a budget or some of these people that might get hired or in a time frame and the whole bit. I'm thinking maybe it would be kind of more exciting and to really kind of lay out an overall vision for that than just saying that we want to have a statewide portal to get to this stuff, and probably some discussion about how it will be these offerings will be vetted somehow so that their quality and even just saying that quality professional development will be available online, blah, 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 and maybe some examples of what that can look like, but not necessarily, because we'll never get this done by May otherwise, I don't think either. And I think then you can be a little bit more how can I say it, you could make it sound a lot more exciting and cutting edge, and if you're not having to figure out how it's all going to work, right now.
Right. Yeah, I think you're right, Brian. We're getting too detailed.
All the districts that do online PD right now, are there any I want to say standards that are followed, because like the PD that we have developed here in Carson City, the face-to-face and what's really being implemented in the classroom is based on the ISTE standards. There's the INACOL standards, the International Association for K-12 Online Learning. They have 12 standards of their own. Is any being followed in any of this PD, or is that a basis that could be, you know, looked at to say, you know, this is a foundation of the critical components of what the PD could or should look like? It's just an idea.
Those were used when we built stuff. The INACOL ones were the specific ones in which we use. I think in some ways, though, if we're going to represent this as a Nevada plan, I think building that off of the NEPF might be a smart move. Right? Those Nevada. Go ahead.
So this is Sarah and Elko, and I think it was Leanne talking about other places. I know that in Elko they have the LMS, they use Canvas, and then they use the Quality Matters framework.
Okay.
So is there a way that we could agree to disagree on a framework? I like that. So we talked about, you know, some other things at the 2-day meeting as well, and what that you know, what that might look like.
Well, and again, I'll go back to what Dale Archiago was talking about. It sounds more to me like he was saying, you know, come up with, you know, what you guys are working on could be how school is going to look in the future. Don't look at it so much as the one-to-one, you know, technology piece for the state. Look at it more as this is what learning in Nevada is going to look like in the future, and make it be the program instead of a program. You know, that if you happen to go one-to-one, then, by the way, here we've got this thing that a committee of teachers and people, you know, put together, that we're really getting to put together something more than that, I think. And so I'm almost wondering if we want to talk more about, you know, like the title of this Google Doc as curriculum and instruction, PD, and assessment in there. So how would assessment look differently in that case? And you know, what's the PD that would be necessary to make the case for that for teachers? And so that it ends up, I think, with a pretty cutting edge look at what schools can look like, and then has the force of the state superintendent, you know, and since they're, you know, in place via the governor, has some oomph behind it, and hopefully that then can really make things look differently. I think it's not as much about how are we going to do PD around one-to-one. I think it's almost more how are we going to do PD around what learning is going to look like in the state. Am I off base, or?
I don't think you're off base, but I think if we don't set kind of our vision or our philosophy of what that could look like, I think we end up kind of pulling ourselves in multiple different directions. So, I mean, the reason that we were really discussing that, you know, should we regulate these or should we expect them to not be regulated? I mean, that sets kind of a pathway for us for a vision for this is what we believe teachers and students are capable of doing or not capable of doing. And I think once we have those kind of marked, then I think it becomes a lot easier to say, okay, then we need to develop this, because we just said our philosophy is that people can or cannot do it.
Gotcha.
So I want to jump in. Maybe I lost track of the conversation, but I feel like we're talking more about helping teachers be online teachers, and I don't know that that's our role. I thought that the idea of curriculum, instruction, PD, and assessment was to teach teachers just better. I mean, we even have it listed on our notes about TPAC, for example. I mean, we want them to, whether they're teaching online or not, shouldn't be our focus. It should be just best pedagogical practices for integrating technology?
Well, part of it too, Holly, is in some ways, yes, we do have to be responsible for the PD, for teachers to learn how to teach online, because if we move to, which I think is the vision, if we move to blended environments, then we need, just like Chris was saying, we can't just have people putting up an hour-long recording of themselves talking, and we need to know that everyone understands what it means to teach in a blended environment. So not only will teachers learn online, but also teachers will teach online. So yeah, we have to kind of do both roles.
Okay, so I see that as a branch of the work we're doing, but not the work, right? Part of the big picture.
I grabbed the past vision and I just put it up there too, so we can see how that compares to what we have now that we're thinking about.
Yeah.
And the direction that I think Holly was taking that I can't disagree with, right, is that we're providing equity and access to tools to support learning. And I think that message is important, and especially when we refer to it as equity. I mean, that's something that does bode well for getting funding.
That was good, Chris. You need to type that. Write that down.
What did I say? Somebody say that?
Equity of access.
And this is Sarah again. I'm going to add on a little bit to what Holly said, and forgive me because I was not at the work group meeting the second day of this conference, so many of my comments you could probably answer quickly. But as I'm sitting and listening and trying to catch up today, I'm feeling a little bit behind, obviously, and wondering I feel like some of our conversation is talking about how do we provide professional development for teachers, and then I feel sometimes we're talking about, are we going to monitor the providers of the PD for teachers? And then I think we talked just briefly about the student piece of this. So are we talking about all of this, or am I moving track?
Well, no, you're right. It is all of it. It's the PD for the teachers to be able to teach with devices, to change their pedagogy for what it looks like.
And so are we talking about, when you say that, I completely get that. We have several, what we call in this area, iPad classrooms or whatnot, and those teachers are supposedly integrating the technology, and some of them do it better than others, and some of them don't do it at all. But so is that what we're looking at, or are we looking at online learning, as in a child is taking an online class, or are we looking at it always from the sense that the teacher is still facilitating the learning and some of it is being done through technology?
Right. It's online PD for the teachers,
right,
but it's blended learning for the K-12 students.
Okay.
Well, and isn't it that online learning for the teachers is about a pedagogy that teaches them to not throw apps on an iPad and then make that your one-to-one environment, but that it is just, it needs to become ubiquitous and something you don't think about, that you've got this technology as a tool, and the kids just naturally get to the point where when they're learning, they're thinking, wow, it would be great right now if I contacted, we know those kids in New Zealand, and we just happen to be studying something that pertains to them. Maybe we contact them and they could, provide us with some information, or, take a picture of what a mountain looks like in New Zealand, or whatever it is that you need, and that kids just naturally go that way. I mean, to me, that was what we were kind of discussing early on, both on the first day and the second, was that we want to teach the pedagogy of, we don't want one-to-one to end up like it always has, where it's all about the tech and not much about, what you do with it and what you don't do with it. So that we're really advancing, we're using the PD piece, I guess we're talking about, to advance that style of pedagogy that we were saying. So I think it's, both, but I'm not sure how much time we're going to, well, I don't know, it's a tough one.
So, okay, so if we even take it back, take it more broader than even online and blended, we want the message to be equitable access to learning.
Right.
And no matter what that ends up looking like, because I mean we could list out 100 things that learning could mean. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I like that idea.
Well, I think what Brian said captures what I'm thinking as well, and that you're right. It is huge. We can't list all of those things, so that's what makes our work so hard.
Yeah.
We can't be restricted to certain things, but we also can't approach everything.
Because if we go, I think we've talked about it on that second day, was really what pushes, I think, legislators is that equity argument, and that's really what this is about. Is we need to make sure that all of our kids in Nevada have the same access to whatever tools or resources are available.
Well, and I think we've got three major pieces here. It's almost as though there should be three separate work groups that then all come back together with the curriculum and instruction, the PD, and then the assessment. There's three major pieces to this.
Right.
I think that's more complicated.
Well, and again, I go back to, we were talking about, getting away from the stage on the stage, and the learning to learn instead of learning to be taught, and all those pieces. And so I don't know, somehow we need to get that in here too. I'm not sure. I guess what we're really talking about now is how we're going to organize this, and where the topic's going to be, and because obviously you need the PD part in there, and we haven't even gotten to the assessment piece yet, but
and where the teachers really become the facilitator of the learning, as you were just mentioning, not the sage on the stage, but facilitate the learning process, not be the keeper of all knowledge, as
right.
How we have operated, or we continue to operate.
Would it be possible and/or helpful if we just set out what are the main elements that need to be in our plan? If we're talking about curriculum and instruction and PD and assessment, so I jotted down main elements just below kind of the standards that you guys have there on the screen, Brian. Thanks. You keep going.
Yeah, go ahead and write it down, Chris.
So the one. Yeah, well, I started to, but I'm not that smart, so I need some help. All I have thus far is teacher PD tools, and then student curriculum, just that's enhanced with technology. It's not pretty yet, but I think if we can frame out the general parts that we know need to go here, then we can overlay the philosophy that we're talking now into how they fit into each one of those parts.
Yeah, I think that'll give us more direction on where to go. Yeah, for sure.
The parts that we just spoke about, which I completely agree, right, is how do we start changing the classroom practice of the educator to know when to and when not to implement technology, and for what intent and what goal you want out of it for learning. I mean, that's a PhD right there. I don't know if we can write that out. So past teacher PD tools, student curriculum enhanced technology, enhanced with technology, what are some of the other things that you think need to go in here? Are we going to talk about curriculum as like from statewide policy decision?
Well, and the curriculum needs to, so that's where we get into the textbook versus curriculum expert created content from other digital resources rather than just a textbook.
Right, and that instructional piece too we talked about on those 2 days was the seat time requirements as well. Do the students have to be attending classes, because we're not changing our entire state education system to be an online system.
Yeah. Right.
Well, that poses bigger questions, like, do we want to? I mean, part of that, yes, and part of that, no. I mean, there's a cost and benefit to all those decisions, but okay. Is seat time 2 words?
Yeah.
It is. That looks weird when it's one. Huh.
It does.
Okay.
I think we can benefit from collecting examples of what folks in our district have already done that have been successful. So if we could look at Carson City's plan, if we could look at the pockets in Washoe, they've been able to help the schools transform in digital classroom, you know, anywhere around the state. If we could look at those and study those, I think it will help us better create curriculum and instruction framework and then build the PD around that. Because don't you think we need the curriculum and instruction because our PD needs to match that?
Right, because I can just tell you, thinking of an example, there's a high school here in Washoe that they bought those little tiny mini laptops and
Chromebooks?
No, they're not Chromebooks.
Netbooks?
Yeah, I think they're more like netbooks. So they had all this grant money, and they bought all these devices. And then they decided they were going to use a canned curriculum, which we use A+. I don't know if you're familiar with that here for credit recovery.
Yeah.
But they decided to use that with every kid as the curriculum on these little devices, right? So, but the teachers didn't have any PD prior to it, and the devices they weren't a good fit because they were too small on the screen. And then the kids did not get to, it wasn't their device, right? So they didn't really have ownership of that. And so it was a one-to-one environment, but it wasn't successful. And that's, I think, a good message too.
Yeah, Tara, I think that's a perfect example. It's a perfect example of how so many attempts have gone wrong. And
right.
we want to help schools do that.
Right. And so it's, yeah, so, and having good examples of teachers that have gone through extensive PD and have devices and are using them effectively, and, you know, they've changed their teaching practice from it.
Right.
Ultimately, does it affect student achievement, or how does it affect student achievement?
Well, and it sounded like, and I can't think of his name, the guy from Maine that video conferenced in, you know, he was making some good points about, he even said, and so if we wanted to get research or data or whatever, it sounds like they might have it, that the changes that they made, if you'll remember, he was talking about that they, which I thought was kind of cool, they decided to do 7th and 8th mainly because that's where the learning was not not have schools in 7th and 8th, and they decide, let's just totally change this culture and do something completely different. And that's kind of what got them going there. And then you might remember I even said something about, you know, would it be better to have a lot of upfront PD? And he seemed to feel that too much upfront PD actually led to teachers building bad habits of getting around using the technology because they couldn't use it right now with the kids because the kids didn't have it, and so he felt that there was some fine line between how much PD the teachers get early and when the kids actually get their technology, because there was some sense that forced teachers then to engage because now they've got to figure this out with the kids. And so
yeah, we saw that with the Pathway Project too, Brian, because our teachers, they started the PD about 6 months prior to getting the equipment, and because of all the various fun things that happen when you're trying to order equipment, everybody was getting their equipment at different times throughout, right. Throughout the first class they were taking, and so we got a lot of interesting emails from teachers saying, okay, well, I just spent, 100 hours trying to get my iPod cart ready, and then I still have to do all these assignments too, and, so it's kind of funny that you mentioned that, because it's true. I mean, they do want the stuff up front, but then when they get the stuff and they are still trying to manage all the online PD, it can be pretty overwhelming.
Right. Well, and the pedagogical shift that, what scared me about that, are you going to get the technology and then just do the same old thing that you did without it, as opposed to really changing the culture and your pedagogy to, to match this new tool. I mean, that's what happens pretty much every time on tech rollouts, and why they've gotten such bad PR is because, people get the stuff that's engaging and they'll get out for a week to 6 months, and then it's like, okay, now what do we do? Kids are tired of just running, programs and it has a certain amount of bang, but now it's actually being detrimental, and then, things really fall apart, because as soon as it loses its oomph, then people don't respect it anymore, and the computers start, having problems and get, damaged, and,
Well, yeah, and we know from other pilots too that the infrastructure has to be ready to support it, because, if you get 2 or 3 classrooms in a school that have, one-to-one situation, their bandwidth gets sucked up pretty fast, and then it just becomes really frustrating, because they've made this change and they have all these, activities that the kids need the devices for,
right.
And then they can't, like, it's super slow, or they can't get on at all.
Like not having enough pencils for everybody, now.
Right. So, I mean, I know this is going to have to be in phases. So what if there's a requirement of, you take so many classes prior to applying for a class set of devices, and then you get your devices, and you're then required to take some more PD after that.
So we could create some type of recommendation, but ultimately that's a district level decision.
Right. That's the other thing too, is if you've got all this equipment coming out, who's going to manage all of that stuff, like the ordering and everything? So yeah, I probably want it to be a district.
Well, teachers write grants for materials all the time, right? I know from Science Directly, I mean, they'll want something in the classroom, it's expensive, so they'll find a grant program that offers that material. If the state were able to offer in some function statewide kind of grants, teachers can apply for to get these machines in their room. And part of that application is a commitment to upfront skill development and then long-term student-focused professional development. Then you could accomplish that without using the county, the individual district as the hub for it.
Oh, I like that. I like that idea.
Or I think this goes along with that is that, oh, okay, so I'm going to go one-to-one, and maybe there's options, you know, maybe there's pad device one-to-one option, and there's a laptop one-to-one option, and whatever else, you know, you might choose to do. But as part of this package that you apply for, and you have to be able to spell out, you know, where you're going to go, there's a package of PD that's built into that, right? So if you get accepted into this program, you know, right now, this is really for next year, and part of that is a 1 week, 2 week, 3 week PD session this coming summer, along with, you know, maybe some other, accompanying ongoing PD, even if it's just getting the different people together that are also gotten the grant and trying this out in their anything, I guess, from a classroom to an entire school or whatever, so that there's part of that upfront stuff, but you're setting them up to start off the year and they're ready to go, and there's enough time to get all the computers in that school and any upgrades to their, you know, infrastructure that are needed, and that kind of deal. And that maybe that's kind of the model that we put out there, is that you know, it's rolled out in that kind of a grant. I mean, I'd want to wordsmith that some, because sometimes that kind of stuff becomes a detriment too. If it's too demanding, then you kind of start to lose the innovative, you know, parts of it. But maybe that's kind of where we go, is kind of a whole setup where it's rolled out and you get all the pieces, not just the hardware, but the PD and the infrastructure. And
I like that. I'm thinking about what you said about infrastructure. So let's say we have a teacher at one school who wants to apply, and they don't have Wi-Fi at their school. And then you have another teacher at another, you know what I mean? I'm just thinking of.
Well, I think that's when you talk to the infrastructure people, because they're another group that's infrastructure, and that's part of the whole thing. When you go for the grant, part of that grant process is what's available, you know, infrastructure-wise, and what's going to be needed at your site to make that go. Some locations might not need much, and others might need a whole lot. But if you make this a state, and it sounds like that's what we're looking for, a state, I don't know, policy isn't the right word, but, you know, this is where we're going, then there's going to have to be, I mean, they're talking about making changes to the infrastructure anyhow,
Right.
to support all this. If you're really going to go one-to-one statewide, then you've got to have, you know, so I think that's just part of the whole deal, is the infrastructure guys are going to have to figure out that kind of standard, you know, you've got to have at least this, and it's got to be so that I think it can support every single kid being online at once, and not, you know, going so slow that it becomes, you know, more a problem than not. But
so if we think about that and we like that idea, we want to put that into our plan here, then does that mean that we ask for a position for an LMS person that also runs professional development for the teachers that sign up as part of this grant statewide program, or are you seeing those as two separate positions?
Well, this is Leanne. I have a question about if this is supposed to be something that we want to have systemic change, the idea of having a competitive grant process, when do we ever get the laggards, if you will, that will never step up and never apply, and then we've got students that are in their classrooms that never have these opportunities?
Right. So it's not really equity. I mean,
No, it's not. We're getting completely away from equity with this, with what I've just been hearing.
right.
Yeah, I agree. But I think there's got to be a way to, so maybe calling it a grant isn't the way to go, but that there's some way that as this comes in, there's the PD and everything is bundled so that, you know, you're right, it can't be a choice. But I think that you also don't want, that's part of the plan, right, is that you want all those things to come together. You don't want, you know, some schools to just have the technology dropped off at the loading dock, and I think that makes the case that you've got to have all those pieces together. So,
and I completely agree with that. They talked about what a seat cost would be per student, and that encompasses everything, which I think is definitely the way to go. But it seems like to me that if we targeted a grade level, say all 7th graders or whatever, statewide, I don't know, I'm throwing that out there, but then all of those teachers that teach those same students, the PD could be focused on the needs of meeting that group of students, something like that, and then everybody is brought on board at the same time in that grade level. Of course, we can't do all K-12, you know, students and teachers at once, but possibly something like that. And a lot of the districts, including us here in Carson City, and I know in Clark, you know, we started with the middle school, basically same philosophy as the folks in Maine, you know, we're going by. That's where the engagement, you know, definitely lessens with the students. So I would see more of something like that. But once again, these are just my thoughts.
But
yeah, and I've seen it where they've rolled it out at 2 grade levels, like, you know, 3rd and 7th, and then kind of moved up until it all joins together. So, no, I think that's a great point. And then people get to learn from, you know, the people that have had some experience, and people get to realize that, wow, if I'm going to teach, say, use your example, 7th grade, and this just, oh, I can't deal with it, then they can get out of 7th grade, and you know, and people that are going, wow, I want to be part of that, can then maybe fill those positions. But
well, and what about, so for longevity, what would be the plan then when those kids finish 7th grade? Would they take the device with them to 8th grade?
I think that's something like that. I mean, that's similar to what he said they did in Maine.
Yeah, because if, you know, if they have a great, you know, 7th grade year and they learn how to use all this, and then they go to 8th grade and it's not there, it really does kind of, you know, cut them off at the ankles.
Right.
It's like, why don't you have this be the plan where we do start in maybe 2 grade, like you said, 3rd grade and 7th grade, and we take that whole cohort through to graduation.
Right.
And that's what we're doing here in Carson City.
Yeah. And then maybe we start phasing in, you know, more as we go. So maybe we then do again 3rd and 7th, so that every year we add on another group. And so by the time we, you know, have gone 4 or 5 years, we've got a lot of kids that have the device. And
well, those 3rd graders, if that's what, I mean, I think we'd have to put more thought into to decide what elementary grade would start with. But let's say it was 3rd grade, then by the time those kids are 7th graders, the program's been going, and they would really literally end up being one-to-one for their entire, you know, K-12 career, or excuse me, pre-12 career. And then I don't know what you do about K2, other than he was saying that when their 4-year contracts were up, they tended to kick those slightly, well, 4-year-old technology back to the elementary schools. Well, now maybe that gets kicked instead to the primary grades, or, you know, there's some things you could do there.
Right, and then after like 4 years, you're not having to supply at the 7th grade level anymore, and then you just keep refreshing at 3rd grade. So you get, here's the new group, here's, you know, that actually sounds like it could work.
Yeah, because I think if you make it, well, I mean, I guess I shouldn't say it couldn't work, but if you just go boom, K-12,
yeah.
And I think you've got a disaster on your hands.
But what's cool, though, about the first couple years or so is it's a gradual, I mean, the first set of teachers are going to have, you know, the bulk of the pressure, but then after that year, then, okay, now the 4th grade teachers are going to get it, and then the 8th grade teachers.
The only thing kind of scary about that is if you're at the upper end, in other words, if you're a 6th grade teacher, which is, you know, going to be the last one to get it coming up from 3rd, or, you know, in the high school, now you're going to get kids that have been using this stuff for 3 or 4 years, and then it gets to you.
Well, no, I think that's a nice little passive-aggressive feature there, because they know these kids are coming up and ready. And actually, I think it would be not as intimidating just because the kids will know the ins and outs of their device already.
Yeah.
And they will probably be, and if a school kind of decides on a certain, like if they use Edmodo, and so the kids are already familiar with Edmodo, a lot of that like procedural and technical training is out of the way. They can hit the ground running on the first day of school and say, okay, here's our Edmodo group and here's all your stuff, and the kids already know what to do.
Yeah. All right, so have I gotten everybody off track now, or?
Not at all.
I'm just wondering how we decide, okay, so if it's a state initiative, this, what you were just describing, what does that look like as a state initiative? We select cohorts from each district, then who's in charge of that?
Right, I mean,
I like the model, but the logistics of it, how does that fit into this plan?
well, you know, we've got some things going on now. I know, I guess it's Washoe that has done some rollouts of, and I bet all districts have really, where they're doing rollouts of certain new pedagogical pieces, and they pick, you know, kind of the pilot school model. And there's lots of different ways you can do that. You can literally make it as broad-based, and let's get a couple of at-risk schools, and let's get a couple of our high-achieving schools, and let's get, or like the STEM rollout in Washoe is all at-risk schools, elementary, middle, and high. So I don't necessarily know if that's the best scenario. I think you'd better have experiences at a lot of different kinds of schools as opposed to one socioeconomic. That you know, you could certainly look at that. That might be, from a money standpoint, too, a little bit more palatable in that you know, you're not trying to do it all at once again. But
well, and here in Carson City, we all 6th, 7th, and 8th graders at Eagle Valley Middle School, we have 2 middle schools, received their computers last week. That was 600. We will be at Carson Middle School this week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, all 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. So all middle school students in Carson City at the end of this week will all have their own laptops to take home. Next fall, we are rolling this out 3rd through 5th grade, all 6 elementary schools. And if the funding source that we have through a private donor grant, we'll have this at Carson High School and Pioneer High School, all alternative schools. So if all the cards lay right, Carson City will have 3rd through 12th by the end of next school year, with every student having a device.
Wow.
And so we've got pilot projects.
Who's doing the PD for that?
With that?
Who's doing the PD for that?
Me. You know, we're doing a train the trainer model because we've had 2 cohorts, one last year, 22 teachers, and another 26 teachers represented grades 1 through 12. So we've got 38 teachers that have been going through this with class sets of laptops and or tablets. And so we are building that cadre of teachers that are now, you know, doing the PD for our middle school teachers. We have 120 middle school teachers to train, and so we have a schedule set up and for those pillar applications, as we had talked about before, and then what some of the other tools will be.
So that's one district then we don't have to pay for, right? You guys are done.
Well, and it's a smaller district that becomes a model for other smaller districts.
Yeah.
Because what we do in Washoe and Clark will look different than what we do in Humboldt or Elko, right?
You guys in Carson better do a good job and not mess it up for the rest of us.
That's right. No pressure.
No pressure. All right. So we've gone an hour and a half, you guys. I'm thinking we probably need to meet again. I need to talk to Kim about this, what we've covered already today. Have we made any progress? I mean, we got a lot of good stuff on our notes, but do we want to focus on the equity piece, or are we ready to decide what we want to give to Dale?
Yeah.
I don't know that we can talk more about equity and get more answers. We just know that it's important. But I also don't know that we're ready to frame what we're going to give to Dale.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the way I feel.
I don't feel like we have an entire big picture yet. I think we've talked about some good things, but
I think we need to, we've done all this great brainstorming. We have all these great ideas out on the table. Now we need to categorize them into our areas, curriculum instruction, professional development, assessment, and then, so if we look at the curriculum and instruction piece, like I'm still unsure about what we're even supposed to do about curriculum and instruction. Are we supposed to create a suggested case or document of curriculum and instruction? Do you know what I mean? I don't even know.
I think what we talked about in Carson that day was getting away from the textbook and having our curriculum specialists guide our teachers to a menu of curriculum from various sources. Is that what you got out of it? I don't know.
I remember getting away from textbooks but not being prescriptive toward any specific program. So basically providing a menu. So does that mean we're generating this menu?
I took it more that it was more a model of incorporating technology in such a way that it became just a tool like pencil and paper, and yet it's obviously so much more encompassing than that, and that you can bring in so many other pieces, and that it changes the pedagogy because of how you can go after learning, and that whole teaching kids to be learners as opposed to be taught part, and that it was really giving us permission to come up with a whole new vision for what school looks like, which I think we'd all agree, is badly needed. And so I think we started to get at that some. I think, they've given us a really big job. I mean, it's huge. I mean, and I love talking about this stuff. I wish we could, you know, have a couple of weeks to just go at it. But,
so maybe what we put for the curriculum piece of that is that really what we want is to be free of the mandated textbook.
right.
And have
some money that you can buy, you know, some of these pieces with.
Right. Maybe I don't know what the word is. Freedom, I guess, is the biggest concept I'm thinking of.
Autonomy?
Yeah. Freedom from a standard textbook with I mean, our C&I department needs something to do. So if we take the textbooks away, they need to have, I mean, in fact, those people would probably need some PD of their own to learn how to find some more quality stuff online, or how to guide teachers to develop a curriculum.
If we advocate for the removal of textbooks, I think there would be a lot of people, especially the old guard, that would not know what to do with that and would think that that's, as an idea, is so revolutionary that they couldn't process it. And I think part of that phase might be to say, like, hey, so what we want is we want to stop spending money on paper textbooks that get constantly ruined. We want to develop our own textbook-like resource that's available online to students 24/7 as a resource.
Right.
It's in that messaging that becomes important.
Right, and we could even follow, you know, the SAMR model and say, you know, we want to substitute the paper textbook for even the same, you know, publisher. Here's their digital version. So we start there. So
and you guys saying that brings me back. I think we got to that where really you want teachers to be able to get to the point where, you know, this online textbook, quote unquote, is something that is there for people to hang on to if they really need that. But just like a lot of the textbooks in my class in the last number of years, you know, they sat on a shelf and they were almost like a library where, oh yeah, you know, there's something in that one chapter about, you know, geology that would be a good, so you could go pull that book out and look that up. But other than that, it wasn't really what we did. We developed our own learning, and since those resources on the net are constantly being, you know, the access to information is constantly changing, and the quality of the information that's there and the interactions you can have, you're really kind of developing it all the time. And so some people are going to be ready for that, and others are going to need that, you know, that textbook piece to fall back on that they'll probably like initially because it's you know, they're, you know, at home and school, and you don't have to carry it. It's just, you know, on the cloud. But
it's huge what we're talking about. Just helping teachers change their practice in a small school is one thing, but creating a statewide plan, that's what we're talking about, and it's huge.
Yeah.
It is. Why are we doing this?
Yeah. Hopefully we can come up with some type of structure where it is doable and we can help make a difference.
Yeah.
Well, and if we need to mention anything about the assessment piece, I mean, with technology, assessment can be ongoing and formative.
Right.
Yep, exactly.
And so it gives, and because there are so many tools out there that will almost prescribe personal learning based on their assessment.
Right.
Only technology can do that in a way that is immediate. You know, a teacher cannot design 35 or even 120 if they're secondary different learning paths for kids. But technology can.
Yeah, because you're guiding them, yeah.
Tara, what I hear you saying is we're building this justification for transforming Nevada schools.
Yes.
That's part of that for our message to Dale. So here, for the message for him to take to the legislatures, we start with this justification. Why is this change needed and what are the benefits? And of course, we can speak to a lot of the economic benefits. And then we, from there, in our message to Dale, we build on, if this is what we want to accomplish, here is a plan, here's a path to take, and maybe this path is statewide, district-wide, school-wide. Like we need to have something where everybody has an access point. In the statewide plan, we can be very general and idealistic, but ultimately we need something that a district can grab a hold of and follow and be successful with.
Yes, write that down.
What did you? You're recording, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say, we could just play it back. Okay, so
Vision is very similar to the past vision that's up right above that.
right.
Right.
And so to transform teaching and learning Nevada by providing a digital age education to all students. So maybe what we do is we more, doesn't necessarily have to say digital age. I think it just needs to say more like personalized.
Yes.
Because digital age, again, is focusing on a tool. If we say a personalized education,
It can encompass a lot of tools.
right?
Almost transforming by providing an inquiry-based, however you want to say that. It just so happens that a one-to-one environment facilitates that, to the maximum, or that's not good wording, but that's what we're really getting at. Is in fact, I'm in a meeting tomorrow to ferret out what Nevada's definition of STEM is going to be, and it's kind of similar.
All right, well, why don't we marinate on this a little bit?
Maybe they'll just contact us about another,
Yeah, do you want to meet again in a week or 2 weeks?
I think you just send out another,
Oh, I like that, Chris. Yeah.
Thanks, I try.
Yeah, that's good.
What I have been doing as we've been talking and things have come up under the main elements of the plan, I've been dropping them back down into that section.
Okay, cool.
For general ideas. I don't know, maybe it's just the way that I'm thinking, but if we have kind of the main elements as a rough framework, then we can go in and fill out the details. And I put equity across Nevada as Nevada Ready is the top one. So if we start that as our claim, and then the other bullet points underneath become evidence pieces to support that claim, then we provide the warrant for future funding and sustainable funding.
Very good.
Yep. Good teamwork, people.
Okay.
Okay. I was just thinking we could just copy and paste all of this stuff into a Wordle and see what pops out as the bigger words.
Oh, that might be scary.
All right.
Do we need to meet next? Do we need to spend some time on these different sections? Do we want to break them up and take different parts and write about it, or what's the smartest way?
Do we need to flesh out more, or do we need to consolidate? I think we need to come up with like 3 bullet points that relate to everything.
Well, is the better time to do that is after we have kind of what those main element pieces are to a greater degree worked out, and then we can say that this really describes a vision for equity. This describes a vision for immediate access for all students. Because then we could just make those 3 or 4 bullet points that you started, the ones for Dale talking points.
Uh-huh.
Well, and I think maybe if we do one more meeting like this, then maybe we can ferret out those pieces and each take one or whatever, and
why don't we do this between now and the next time we meet, is everybody go through these notes and add in any of the spots where you are coming up with some thoughts that you think we should include.
Write that in somewhere, you know.
Okay.
To-do list.
When we open this up, it's like, oh yeah, that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
And can we make the agreement to do that as insert comments so we don't change what was captured here?
Yeah, yeah. Does everybody know how to do the comments?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so just highlight and then put comments.
Anonymous lemur.
What am I?
You're the anonymous lemur.
I'm a lemur.
Isn't that Frank? It's now Chris is coming up with his name on it. Before he was.
You must have logged in. Did you log in?
I had been logged in, but I guess it finally caught up with the. Perhaps we can work on internet access here too.
Yeah.
So I think I think a week is too soon to meet again. Is that 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Okay. That way we have enough time to get in there and look at the notes again and not feel like we're totally rushed.
Okay.
So, all right, I'll take a look, and unless you guys want to look at your calendars right now and see in 2 weeks what your schedule looks like.
You know, we're here now, so it's probably best to just map it out now.
Okay, so everybody go to your calendar.
Calendars fill up quickly.
Yeah.
Yes, they do.
So sometime
Today's
10th
the
and 14th.
So next Monday is the 3rd.
So the week of the 10th.
It's much better for me than the week of the 3rd. So.
The 10th is the district TV day here in Carson City, so the 10th would not work for me, but any of the other days would be.
Do you like this time of day?
Sure.
Yes.
The 11th and the 12th, I've got 2 almost full day trainings to do. The 13th and 14th are wide open for me. But
The 14th.
13th or 14th are fine for me.
The 13th doesn't work for me, but the 14th is fine.
I think
Do
I
you want
can
to do
make the 14th one.
The 14th at 9 o'clock again?
14th at 9 o'clock. All right, I'll send out an email to everybody.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tara, for putting this together.
Yeah, thanks, Tara, for setting this up.
Yeah, I think we did a good brainstorming today. All right, have a good rest of the day.
Okay,
Thanks,
take care, everyone.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.